right, folks. Good morning. Charles McNamara here with Guardian Group Services. Really have been looking forward to this podcast in particular. Had to put it off a couple of times just due to work. Everybody was getting sick during the holidays. Really cool brand. We're going to talk about Raven Concealment. Folks, I love my stickers, and they've got some really cool stickers. Can't wait to jump in today with our guest, Michael. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's a pleasure to have you. I know we were both just chatting offline for a few seconds. Great to have you.
I'm excited to be doing this. I think the new way forward for most people in the industry is doing more interactive stuff with their audience. So this is pretty exciting to be able to be out in front of everyone.
Yeah, I came across your company. I'm going to jump into just my personal story for a moment. Recently got my concealed carry. Spent months researching what kind of gun I'd like to get, any optics I was gonna put on that bad boy, if I was gonna put a light and just kind of trick this thing out. Got it, purchased it. I was like, oh wait, I gotta get a holster. In the shop, I probably just bought the most cheap, clunky thing that I could buy just because I was being so cheap. Um, Learned my lesson, did some research, came across your company, and you guys were so kind to donate some items to us, and we have been sharing that in our recent New York State concealed carry classes in Brooklyn, New York. Um, so a lot of people don't think about that option. So kind of want to talk a little bit about first, choosing the right holster, and there are many of them. But it doesn't matter how good your pistol is; you got to be able to carry that with you
Yeah.
concealed.
Yeah.
So I just want to find out a little bit. How did you actually get started in this business?
I mean, the joke I make a lot of times is based in truth, which is it was a hobby that got out of control and then took over our lives. We started off as I was selling copiers to businesses when I first was out of college, and
Mhm.
I was always into firearms. I was going shooting every weekend, but I didn't know anything really other than like, hey, I wanted to be able to carry concealed, and this was actually before even the most states had a concealed carry permit. Ohio didn't even have a concealed carry permit at the time,
Mhm.
and the time before permits were really a widespread thing, there weren't really a lot of concealed carry companies. Like there were holster companies, but most of them were making stuff for competition shooting, law
Mhm.
enforcement, tactical, that sort of thing. And this is obviously like shortly after 9/11. So we're not talking about like during the huge surge of gear development that came later. But a friend of mine and I were actually, as a hobby, had set up as a dealership, and we're selling nylon gear, like High Speed Gear and Black Hawk and Eagle Industries and stuff at gun shows, because we just wanted a way to buy our products that we wanted for our own hobby at wholesale rather than retail. And so then it was like, well, we probably know enough people at the gun shows that would be interested in buying this. And it was through doing that we met the other gentleman that became kind of the founder of Raven Concealment, because he was a customer of ours, and he came to us at one gun show and was like, hey, I bought this kit in the mail where I'm going to make these knife sheaths with it. And he had, the very first thing I asked him was, I just bought my first Glock 34. And I said, can you make an inside the waistband holster for this thing? And he's like, no, I don't want to do holsters. That's going to be a pain in the ass. And, he was right. Prophetically, it was actually the biggest pain in the ass you could ever do, because instead of being a knife sheath company, he started making holsters for us, which we were reselling. And then we were selling so many holsters, because this was right around the time that Ohio finally got their concealed carry permit. We were selling so many that he couldn't keep up. And so it
Mhm.
was the conversation was kind of like, why don't we all just band together and make this thing work? And what we realized was, although we enjoyed selling plate carriers and riggers belts and all kinds of cool, tactical gear that looked like the pictures from the Iraq and Afghanistan campaigns, the real money we were making was selling holsters and concealed carry belts. So we went all in on making holsters, and Raven Concealment Systems emerged out of that. And that was back, 2005. So we're now on the doorstep of 20 years doing this, and it's, we've watched the whole wave of state after state after state getting concealed carry permits of some kind, or just going constitutional carry. And every time a new state had that happen, we got this big groundswell of new customers, because everyone was in the same boat as you just described, where you're like, well, I want to carry a concealed firearm. I've never been able to in the state I live in. And I attribute a lot of our early success to just being lucky that was what was going on in the country at that time. So we didn't set out to be like, we're going to start a holster business. It was straight up like we were doing something for ourselves and saw that there was a little bit of an opportunity to maybe sell a few more of them, and then it just kind of ran away from there.
Gotta say, and I'll kind of show a few pictures, and I've got some here. Beautiful, well-made pieces of equipment, and for some, it's an afterthought. And it's funny, when I took my training class, the instructor said, "You are probably going to have about 40 different holsters." I literally, I counted them out. I have 3 inside the waistband already. I have 4 outside the waistband. I have 2 pocket. I don't have any shoulder holsters yet. I bought 1 belly band. I didn't do the ankle holster. I'm too tall for that. Didn't do the chest rig. I'm not in the military anymore, so it wasn't all about that. And I have 1 off body bag holster, which is like in a fanny pack. And it's so funny. It's like you go absolutely crazy with all of the different options that are out there.
Well, if you think about it, like, we live our lives in so many different ways. I spent years in a suit and tie walking in and out of other people's offices. I've worked in environments where, you would have been terminated immediately if you got caught carrying concealed. And then on the other hand, then you get into the firearms industry, and literally everywhere you go, no one even cares that you have a concealed. And so it's like, then you see the other side of it, where people get kind of lazy about whether they're actually concealed or they're just covered up. It's a very different vibe. But, the way you dress to go for a hike on a weekend is very different from how you dress to go to church on Sunday, or from when you're going on a date, or, when you're working in the front yard. And I think that one of the dilemmas we run into in kind of the gun industry in general loves the ability to create a desire for products in new categories. And some of it is like a solution in search of a problem, and some of it is a legitimate, like, we're solving a problem that presents itself all the time. But I do think that there's a lot to be said for having, like, look, there's a time and a place for a shoulder rig. There's a time and a place for an ankle holster. There's a time and a place for pocket carry. And, I have friends that are like, they will only carry 1 full-size service weapon, and they will only carry it in 1 position on their body. And their entire wardrobe is kind of boxed into, they can only dress like one particular way, because you can't carry that solution dressed in other manners. And then there's other people that I have that, like, if it's just too much of a pain in the butt to carry concealed, they just don't, right? And there's a case we made for that. If you've got some social awareness and some combatives experience, maybe there's a case to be made for that. I kind of, there's always a happy medium somewhere with everybody, but I think that concealed carry is something that, like, you kind of have to bend your lifestyle to it, and it has to bend to your lifestyle. And there's some people that are very dogmatic that it has to be done just this way, and there's only one solution for it. I personally, not a fan of shoulder rigs, but I can see the utility for them depending on the person's job and application for these things. If I was driving a taxi cab in New York City, I can see a lot of use for a shoulder rig where I'm in the car sitting down all day long. It probably is more comfortable and potentially more accessible for the situation. If I am a park ranger or something like that, where I'm working outside, I can probably get away with outside the waistband with like a flannel shirt over it. So the use cases drive a lot of the requirements. But yeah, there's a reason that we've also stayed away from making products in a lot of different categories, because it's like, I'd rather be the specialist in very specific niches and be the best solution for it than try to be like, well, we have to have a holster offering in every one of these categories just to check the box. Because that's what you walk through the average gun store holster aisle, and there's a whole lot of boxes being checked that they're not that great of products.
No, I totally agree. I got a couple of people saying hello. Look, Charlie's saying, let's do this. CCW United States all the way around. All right, Charlie. John, good morning. Is one of our instructors. John, good morning. Go back to work. We need you working, please. No. Good guy. Great instructor. For us, we're a training school, so we do security training, we do the CCW classes, we do armed guard training. We've got a mixed bag of students lately: male,
Yeah.
female, young, old, public sector, private sector. Um, we're happy to have students and educate and train them. And you kind of said it earlier too. In some of these classes, you do run into retired law enforcement, sometimes military, that get a little complacent in here.
Yeah.
So it's just nice to re-educate them and throw different scenarios because people just kind of get used to doing the same thing. In your world, do you serve more of the public sector, the private citizens?
It's almost like we've got one foot in two worlds. So we've always had a really strong connection to what I would consider like the enthusiast shooting community. So like the guys that are taking a lot of training classes, a lot of our early fame came from the Magpul Dynamics videos from the handgun video when Travis and Chris were using our gear in those DVD sets. And it's funny. It's been long enough that there's probably a lot of the audience that's never even heard of that or seen it or knows what we're talking about. Go check out YouTube. It's out there. You can see the old dynamic handgun videos on there. But that thing was a huge exposure to an audience that was like during that time period post 9/11, where everyone was wanting to get trained and they were spending a lot of money on travel to these classes. And that market segment was kind of where we had made our bones. And kind of running in parallel to that, we also picked up a huge amount of government and private security contractors, because that was during the peak of the war on terror. So when in those same training classes, very often were guys that were getting themselves personally ramped up to go downrange in either a military, federal law enforcement, or private security contracting role. And so once we got kind of pulled into the government space, then that's its own little universe where you have to get vetted as a supplier and you got to go through all these approval processes. But once you're in, you kind of become the de facto solution for that type of stuff. And so we've had a very, very strong role in. The joke I make is, in most cases, if you see a guy wearing a suit with an earbud protecting somebody, he's probably wearing our holster, because it's just the nature of the contracts we've done. On the other side of it, though, when we got into the government space, we had to develop more advanced manufacturing methods to be able to serve that large volume customer base. And so when we did that, it also got us into a space where we were making products that were more approachable for the entry level shooter. So, we went from our Phantom outside the waistband holster, which is what we kind of started the company with, which by the time we were, up and running, it was around $100 price point. Now I think it's running about 135 or so, but at that time it was around $100. And we came out with the Perrin, which is our outside the waistband that's injection molded. That's a $50 to $60 price point. So you're putting yourself into a category for like the average retail customer that if they're not sure, they can go buy this product, and it's a really nice, reliable, vetted product that's been issued to thousands of federal agents. And so it's like you can kind of put your trust in it, and it's not going to break the bank. We still offer the Phantom, along with a lot of other carry options for appendix carry and strong side inside the waistband. But there's, that's a really good cross section of like, to do government business and to do private sector business a lot of times requires different things. But in our case, the needs kind of lined up almost exactly so that they serve the same audience.
One thing I love about your products, their quality, amazing, and they're all made in the USA, right? All made in
Right
America.
here in Cleveland. Yeah.
Awesome stuff. And when we talk about, the mindset, of a carrier, like for me personally, and I think a lot of our students who take the concealed carry in New York, they kind of learn to carry themselves a little different. New Yorkers love to, talk smack, we are who we are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can't tell us anything. But, when you take on that responsibility, and including myself, right? I got a little tactical muffin. I started to work out and get in shape. I know I got to lose some more pounds to carry appendix, but you kind of, think differently. You walk differently. You talk differently. You kind of view others' problems differently as well. And one thing I always say, listen, if you see a knucklehead, it doesn't give you the right to go after them and shoot them, right? If they
Right.
had
Right.
better things to do, they would be doing them. So just kind of keep it moving. But even in the way that you protect yourself. A lot of people now are taking OC spray training, just kind of basic
Mhm.
self-defense, learning pepper spray. Um, and then once you get your license and get your weapon, got to get out to the range and train. You know,
Yeah.
it's like a must.
Yeah, I mean, people forget about the fact that any hobby that you're into, right? If you like to golf or you like to go to the batting cages or you're really into running or whatever, it's like it's not fun at the beginning. It's because you're not good at it. But to get
Yeah.
good at it, you have to put the reps in. And the challenge is that putting the reps in with shooting is very different than putting the reps in with running, right? Like buy a pair of running shoes and I can start running every morning. And the only thing that matters is if I have the self-discipline to go out and do it. It doesn't cost me anything beyond the initial purchase of the shoes and clothes I'm going to wear. Shooting, you're burning consumable stuff that has a market volatility to it. You know, like we saw what ammo prices did over the last couple of years, and
Hmm.
you know, perhaps they'll come down now that you know the market seems to be swinging back the other direction. But generally speaking, once ammo prices go up, they don't typically plummet back down again. You know,
Yep.
it's like gas; it costs what it costs, and you got to put it in your car whether you want to or not. So. Um, the shooting side of it is very, very important for training. And I talk to people. As a matter of fact, I made an Instagram post about this a few weeks ago where we don't do a lot of content on our social media for like beginner level stuff because
Hmm.
we've always, like I said, typically tailored to more of the experienced enthusiast shooter. We love the new guys, but it's like there are places like Guardian Group to get trained where so you know to get ramped up to the level where our stuff was just the obvious choice. But I did answer a question that I have fielded from friends of mine over the years because if you know how it is, if you're the gun guy in a circle of friends that aren't gun people, you become their guru in that
Yep.
space, right? You get asked all the questions, and it's like, well, if somebody's never carried a concealed firearm before, they don't realize until they buy the gun and they buy the holster. There's a big intimidation factor about put this thing on and go out in public. You know, like
Sure. Hmm.
you feel like everybody knows that you have a gun and everybody's going to see it, and in some cases they will because you've got a terrible holster and you don't know how to dress around the gun and you don't know how to carry yourself while you're doing it, and you keep touching it because you're afraid that it's going to fall off, right? I always say that like kind of the best progression is like almost like a 4 to 6 week arc, depending on how your comfort level is with stuff. And I'm like, before you do anything, don't go buy a gun because that's always the first question, right? What kind of gun should I get for concealed carry? I'm like, hold on, you know, like let's talk about like let's just buy a flashlight, buy a really nice flashlight, drop $100+ on a tactical light that you can carry in your pocket. Because if you never go any further in your progression of self-defense than just carrying a flashlight, it's always going to be useful. If there's a fire in your office building at work, you're going to be glad you had it. If you're trying to get the cat out from under the bed so you can vacuum like that, it would be nice to have it with you. There's no downside to having illumination.
Hmm.
And you can pretty much take it everywhere. You can go to sports events, you can go into the airport with it. All of these places, it passes, right? Then once you get comfortable carrying that around and learning how to deal with the inconvenience for a few weeks of like having to find a pocket to put it in, and it's more of a challenge for females than males typically because guys, we always have pants with pockets for the most part. Ladies, depending on what they're wearing, they might have to get a little creative, keep it in the purse, keep it tucked in some other special pocket. But like we find that like if you can get used to carrying a flashlight, then it's easy to progress to the next thing, which is like go buy a quality tourniquet, get a
Yeah.
soft T or a cat, and go take one Stop the Bleed class. And you can even find free Stop the Bleed classes in some cities, but make sure it's an actual accredited one. But
Hmm.
go learn how to use that. Again, you can carry tourniquet anywhere. And you're going to have to get used to finding a way to carry it comfortably and to keep it out of sight because you don't want to be walking around with a tourniquet strapped to the front of your sport coat, right? Like that's no good. And it's like only once you've gotten used to carrying those two things around does it then make sense to progress onto like let's talk about buying a gun that you're going to carry because you've now proven to yourself that you're actually willing to dedicate the time and effort to the art of concealed carry.
I'd so agree with that, like 1,000%. And it's pretty funny. In our training class, when we do the OC pepper spray, so
Mm-hmm.
we tell folks, listen, just get used to keeping that on your belt clip for a couple of weeks. And same thing with the tourniquet. People like tourniquet. Why do I need a tourniquet? Well, listen, if you carry a gun and you put holes in people, you
Yeah.
never know, right? They take the
I've
weapon.
I've run across a lot more car accidents than shootings in my life, but that the odds of finding someone bleeding in day-to-day life considerably higher in most cases, at least here in the United States, than I am in getting in a shootout.
Yep, absolutely true. We talk about skills and proficiency. Mindset, I think, is one of them, having the right weapon and right equipment. But what other training and skills do you think a person should have, if they decide to go that route and they want to live that lifestyle? And it is a lifestyle for concealed carry.
Yeah, it is. And I think, there's the end goal is to be at a point, it's like it's as much a mental game as it is anything, because you have to be like simultaneously constantly aware of the condition of your firearm and that it's the covered up, and not just covered up, but actually concealed, not printing through your cover garments and things like that. And you have to know that it's there, right? Like the trouble is that once you know it's there, then you have to forget that it's there. Because if you are consciously thinking about the gun being there all the time, then you carry yourself differently. You have a different gait. And I've said this for years, that I've made more concealed carriers in public, not because I ever saw their gun and not because they printed, but because they kept touching it. The elbow check on the side of the hip, or they're constantly like readjusting the front of their shirt if they carry appendix. And it's like these little nervous ticks are what give it away. It is rarely, because the average John Q public is not looking for a gun, and if they see you printing, they're probably not going to know that it's a gun. But the two people who will know what's going on are other guys that are carrying other people that are carrying concealed, and criminal elements, because it's like that there, and law enforcement for a large degree. Like, I had a retired federal agent friend of mine that dude could, with uncanny consistency, just spot by the way someone was walking whether they had a gun on or not. And I was like, how do you do that? But he's like decades of dealing with terrible people that are, hiding guns on them as part of his job. And so it's like that skill set. Some of it is just, it takes time and experience doing it, right? Some of it's also from getting good concealed carry classes that cover the more important things, not just like, here's how to draw and shoot, but like living your life around the gun. Like, what do you do with the gun in a public bathroom stall? What do you do when it's like, the tough decision about, I'm walking up to a building, concealed carrying, and there's a no gun sign on the door. Now, do I ignore the no gun sign and just walk in there, because if they don't have magnetometers, do they even know I have it? Or do I go back to my car, take the gun off, possibly have someone see me taking a gun off in a car and call the police on me, even though I'm not doing anything wrong? But also, I'm putting a gun in a car that's in a parking lot. I'm going to walk away and leave it there. Well, cars don't make good gun safes, right? Yep. And so now I'm making a decision of I'm lowering my risk on one front, but raising my risk on another front. So these are tough calls. And I don't know there's necessarily a training class that covers all this, but what I do know is that these are things that a good concealed carry class at least points out, that these are questions you're going to have to solve. These are the daily things that when you strap that gun on, that you're going to have to deal with navigating some of these tough choices. And very often it's a case of you see that sign, but it's like, I'm going in to order Chipotle. I don't think they're going to really know that I have this thing on. Well, if that's the case, hey, the old World War I British ace Bader said, rules are for the obedience of fools and the guidance of wise men. And there's some instances where it's like you have to do the best thing under the circumstances, not necessarily following the absolute letter of the law. And then in other cases, you have to absolutely rigidly follow the law. And it's like on a daily basis, we have to make that decision. And it's not really any different than driving your car, right? Like there's times where I know me personally, I'm usually above the speed limit more than I'm below it, but that's just the nature of living in a polite society. Generally speaking, though, getting back to the original thread of this thing, is like from a skill set that I think that is very often overlooked is, if you look at the average gun enthusiast in the industry, right? There's almost a uniform, and I make fun of this a lot, where it's like they swear allegiance to House REI or House Duluth Trading, right? Where they buy all their pants and all their and it's like, oh, I see you've discovered the Cool brand or Solomon or it's like these are great brands, but like if you're walking around Brooklyn dressed like you're actually hiking in Acadia National Park, there's something off, right? Like,
Yep.
and also what happens when you have a job interview, or what happens when you want to go to a nice restaurant, and it's like you can't always dress like you're backpacking. And unfortunately, I think the part that gets overlooked is like, here's how to actually dress. Here's how to find tailors that can actually make alterations to your clothes to reinforce the area so that the rear of your slide doesn't eat through all of your sport coats. Just random stuff like that like it gets overlooked, but it is definitely a key part of it. And I think especially for women that are doing concealed carry, finding a seamstress that can do alterations to clothing is a game changer, and it's not expensive. Everybody thinks it's like you're having a custom made suit and it's going to cost thousands of dollars. The amount of stuff I've had modified and it cost me like $20 to do it, it's ridiculous that more people don't do it. So that would be, in a roundabout way, the big skill for me is like learning how to live your life around the gun also involves like those other non-gun related purchases and services that would actually help you be better suited to carry.
It's pretty funny you say that. I had one of my body bag holsters, a little like fanny pack, actually tailored to custom fit a holster that I had with all my mods on there. It was $22.
Yeah.
With a $5 tip. They were super nice. They
Yeah.
looked at it like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, showed them my license. They were so cool about it. I'd been going to them for years. But yeah, I would say, tailor, have a good tailor. And the clothing, you kind of talked about this before. In Brooklyn, like you can pick out the people right away. They all got the 511, tactical gear, and right away, probably carrying.
Yeah.
They are devoted to their brand. But I get it. It makes sense.
It's kind of like the culturally accepted uniform, right? Like it's how you signal to other gun guys that you're a gun guy. And it's like after a while, if you want to have a funny experience, go sit at the airport in Las Vegas in January, the day or two before SHOT Show actually opens, and watch the people coming in, because it's almost like someone was handing out the same outfit on the other end of the airport terminal, and they all come walking through wearing the same Merrills and 511 pants and tactical shirts.
It's my goal to get out there one of these years. I just found out about that last year, just kind of navigating this space and in this world, and it seems like the coolest thing to go to.
It's a lot of fun. It is the industry's, what I call, it's like the industry's like class reunion, if nothing else. So you get to see a lot of your friends you won't get to see anywhere else for the rest of the year.
Awesome. So I actually want to talk and show, some of the gear that you have that's on your website. You sent some of these products to us. I had a chance to check them and test them. I showed them out during the classes, and, Guardian Group, we just want to thank you for, sharing your cool equipment with us.
Oh, yeah.
Not a paid endorsement, folks. I mean, you want like the gold standard, this is where you got to go. The first one, which I was really amazed by, the Executive Select. Inside the waistband, beautiful piece of equipment here. The one I have in my hand is for the SIG 365, which seems to be a very common gun for concealed carry. Tell us a little bit about this one.
So that's actually the biggest departure from our legacy manufacturing methods that we've done to date, and it is we debuted it originally in Las Vegas at SHOT Show in 2024 here. Excuse me. And kind of the concept behind it, it's additive manufactured. So like 3D printing will people have a stigma about 3D printing because they think of it from like the hobby grade printers that they use to print parts for their D&D tabletop games or whatever. But it's like, this is the machinery that's being used to produce this, and the technology behind it is the same method that's used to produce like aerospace parts and luxury car interior parts and firearms chassis. So it's a really interesting material. The reason it's so fascinating and the reason we chose to go that route was because it is a very expensive manufacturing method. It's actually, all joking aside, it's our least profitable product because the cost is so high. If I actually marked it up according to like business best practices, that it would cost considerably more on retail. But the material and the manufacturing method allows us to make shapes that are not possible with, you know, a bent piece of Kydex or an injection molded polymer, because it allows us to make it thick where it needs to be thick and thin where it needs to be thin. And it's in the exterior of the holster has no features of the gun presenting through it. So what you have is a very smooth, anatomically shaped holster that's designed to orient the gun in the most concealable position while still making it very accessible for a quick draw stroke. But the interior is like perfectly fitted to the gun. And so you get away from that thing where it's like, you know, your typical Kydex holster, it's a flat piece of plastic that gets heated up and wrapped around the gun, and as a result, it looks like the gun that's inside of it. And that's because the material has to remain that thickness. It's just following the contours of the firearm. But a firearm does not have a shape that's in a lot of ways conducive to being carried. A firearm's designed to be held in your hand and shot. And so it's like the position of the controls and the angles on the edges of the slide and the dust cover. These things, no one ever gave a thought to how it was going to feel up against your body. And so
I gotta say too, I don't have a SIG, but a buddy of mine let me borrow his just, you know, to test and train it. This holster felt so comfortable on the body, and it's also nice that it has the extra slot for the magazine.
Caddy. Yeah,
beautiful piece.
Yeah, it's like it is a big departure. People look at it and it's like, that's a weird looking holster, and I'm like, yeah, but that's because it does something that none of the other holsters out there do. And you know, the biggest challenge that we've had, there are other companies that do 3D printed, you know, firearms accessory parts that do holsters even out of it. But I think the biggest defining difference between RCS and any other brand and how they're approaching additive manufacturing is, it's been our goal to think in the language of the material we're making in. So that product is designed for the medium that is made out of, instead of trying to make an injection molded holster using a 3D printer. You know, it's like the two holsters would be very different. I mean, you've got other examples of our products right there with you, and you can see there's a very distinct shape difference and dimensional difference on those things. So the VSB is not going to be for everybody. It's designed for appendix inside the waistband carry. It's designed for people that want to carry a spare magazine and a gun in one package. It's the first time we've ever done something like that. But when you compare its overall footprint to your traditional like sidecar style holster, it is a fraction of the size side to side. So like normally you'd put a holster mag carrier combo on up front, and it would basically go the entire front span of your pants, you know, 9 or 10 inches wide across the front. The VSB is like just over 5 inches. So you're talking about a considerably smaller footprint, and that's because that material allows us to take the spare magazine and actually tuck it in behind the firearm itself in order to reduce the overall footprint of the holster.
Awesome. Lewis, great guy. He is a member at the local Rod and Gun Club. He is looking for a SIG. Lewis, you cannot have this one. Maybe I'll let you test it out and try it. We'll see. Really, really good stuff. You will not be disappointed. We'll let you test it out. So this one, I want to show off. Beautiful, the Jake, and I, kind of like to say this is like the Mustang. It's beautiful. It's sleek. It looks fast. It looks sharp. I was kind of introduced to this recently with the little wing to help it not print as much. I love the style on this. You know, the Victory First signature series. Beautiful. And I'm a Glock person. That's just what I'm used to. It's what I'm trained on. Easy to pick up and go bang. But this holster, really, really nice, and is perfect for my weapon.
Well, and that's an interesting collaboration project we did with one of my longest friends in the industry, Matt Jakewees, his nickname is Jake. He is, when you were talking earlier about like, training and, specialized skills for concealed carry, Jake's whole background was training federal agents in low-vis work for before they deployed downrange. And then when he got out into the private sector and started training, he does an enormous amount of training for law enforcement, but also the civilian classes he does. It's everyday carry, concealed carry, fighting from concealment, because his whole thing is that low vis, no vis environment. but he and I have been friends for years. He's worked with us in developing other holster products, testing and vetting stuff. And when we were trying to put together a solution that kind of solved the problems of appendix carry using like a Boltron or a solution. Boltron and Kydex are the two thermoplastics that most of the holsters in the industry are made out of. But when we were wanting to expand our appendix offerings, Jake had some ideas of things he wanted to see in an appendix carry holster, and conversations over a few old fashions, and we were like, well, what if we did a little collaboration on this? So the one thing I would say is he would be a great guy to get out to have it for like a guest appearance at your facility. I think you guys would really like him. He does a fantastic job of covering the actual day-to-day stuff about like here's how you deal with concealed carry, not just the shooting the gun from concealment. Mm-hmm. But the Jake holster is an appendix inside the waistband holster that uses a claw and a wedge in order to orient the gun for optimal concealment and accessibility. And so, the claw that you referenced already, that's it's a lever, and it's designed to engage with your belt. When you cinch your belt down, the belt levers the trailing edge of the holster in toward the body, which pivots the butt of the pistol grip in, which is typically the most problematic part of the gun when it comes to printing. Then the wedge, which is down toward the muzzle end on the inboard side of the holster, that is a feature that it's removable, and there's a couple different sizes that comes with it, but you can kind of customize it to your anatomy. But it fills that void as your torso tapers into your groin. It fills that spot so that the gun doesn't kind of tilt inboard, because what happens is the weight of a pistol, the weight of a pistol is in the rounds in the grip of the gun. And so when the gun is inside a waistband here, this weight wants to tip out over the top because it's just hanging in space. And so if you have something down here to counteract that so that it keeps it pressed up against the body, and then the claw is turning the grip inboard toward the body, it makes it much more concealable for daily carry. And it's also, weirdly enough, more comfortable that way because it's not constantly kind of sloshing around inside your pants. Yep. Both of those features they're modular, so you can put them on or take them off, because not everybody's body type works with the same features the same way. But that's always the challenge as a holster guy, is you got to make something adaptable enough for the widest amount of body types, and at the same time not so generic that it doesn't do anyone's body type any good.
Yeah. So the next one I had, and this was actually new to me. I have never seen anything like this in person or had a chance to get one of these, a Vanguard 2 kit. And this is super sleek, the super new. Took me a little while to get used to. Have one here, so the next CCW class we're going to give this one away. Maybe we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. The neat thing about the Vanguard is it kind of created a new category of holster in general. It's a minimalist holster, and as you can see, it only covers the trigger guard, and it engages with that trigger guard in the bottom of the dust cover. Has a single belt clip on it, and a claw integrated with it, so it gives it that grip tuck capability. The nice thing about it is you can put it on the gun, and kind of the difference between it and a traditional holster is, normally a traditional holster, you would draw, shoot, and reholster without taking off. Because it's only holding onto the trigger guard, you don't want to reholster it by leaving your pants. You take the holster off your pants and put it back on the trigger guard. The neat thing about it, though, is that like all of your administrative handling of the firearm, you can load, unload, do all of that stuff without ever having the trigger exposed, which is a very safety enhancing feature of this thing. It's also super slimline. So for people that are like, hey, look, I just want to throw a pistol on because I'm going to run down to the convenience store and get a gallon of milk. Yep. This is the like, we'll just take your gun, right? It doesn't take that much to have it. And that way, even when it's off your body, the trigger guard is still covered, but it's the fastest to put on and take off. It is I have a lot of customers where it's exclusively the way they carry. I have a lot of customers where it's like you described earlier. It's one of a dozen different carry methods that they use depending on what they're doing and how they're dressed. But it unlocks some abilities that you wouldn't have with a traditional holster. And when you take off the claw and the belt clip and you just have that trigger guard piece, it also is a really neat functioning item for either safe storage in your gun safe. It works really well. You can put a static line on it and have it tethered inside of a bag or on a nightstand so that you have the trigger guard covered, but when you pick it up, it just pops the trigger guard cover off, and then you can start doing what you need to do. It is not for everybody, and it does require some training. So it's important to have a company that gives good training on these types of practices. I just think it's something that, like, when we released it, gosh, it's been, I want to say it was 2012 when that product first came out. Everybody was like, "That's the most unsafe thing in the world. You're going to shoot your dick off." All the classic things. Yeah. And the reality is that it's proven that no, it's not at all unsafe. It's actually more safe in most cases, because when you're forcing people to cover up the trigger guard before they reholster the gun, you take away one of the opportunities, because most accidents with firearms happen. It's like an airplane. Airplanes don't usually fall out of the sky. They usually crash at takeoff or landing, because that's the transition point. That's the most dangerous time, is when you're transitioning from rolling on the ground to flying in the sky, and then coming back out of the sky and transitioning to rolling on the ground. And shooting is no different. Like, most of the dangerous negligent discharges that happen is somebody got on the trigger before they fully, it was too early in the draw stroke to have your finger on the trigger, right? And so they kaboom, and they ventilate their leg or their groin or the guy standing next to them on the range or whatever. And vice versa, on reholstering, people are like, "Man, I just smoked that. That was awesome." And then they get real haphazard about putting it away. And that's when either they forget to take their finger off the trigger, or they're not looking at what's going on with their holster, and they've got a shirt tail or a cord lock from a jacket or a zipper or something, or even a piece of spent brass in the holster body. You go to put that in there, and it engages the trigger, and kaboom. So this eliminates the ability for that, because you are securing the trigger before you ever even begin moving it back toward your body.
It's so funny too. When I first started getting used to carrying with a holster daily, literally every time going in, going out, nice and slow, double check, hips out, double check, hips out, slow and steady.
Once the shooting's done, there's no race. You don't like.
Yes.
I've never understood, there's, and people will argue this ad nauseum on the internet, but like the whole thing where it's like, "Oh, you shouldn't need to look your gun into the holster." And I'm like, if I'm putting the gun away, the fighting's done. I've got nothing more important than making sure it safely goes back into the holster. And especially if it was an actual use of force situation, my adrenaline's probably coursing. I'm all on top. Like, there's way more opportunity to mess this very simple act up. And so I need to be hyper focused on getting that gun safely stowed, and then I can worry about what else is going on around me.
Sure, absolutely. We do live fire training. Another thing that we use is simunitions, just to get people used to, just carrying, we'll have them just for the whole day, just keep it on their person, in different positions, get used to carrying, sitting, get used to carrying in an elevator. New York, it's a lot of elevators, you're bumping into people, giving hugs and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just kind of, getting used to each little task, taking it in, taking it out, putting it in. The last one I wanted to share, which I came across your website, which I thought this was really good. You have a summer and a winter carry combo on your website right now. Is this still available?
Yes, it's something that we have put together bundles over different times of the year in the past, and this was one that was always like just kind of a steady performer, because it answers a lot of the needs for somebody that, like, if you don't have a solution, especially for somebody starting out. This covers kind of the basics. You've got an outside the waistband holster that covers, a lot of people will transition to outside the waistband during the fall and winter because you're wearing more layers of clothing. And so on one hand, winter is great because all your clothes are big and puffy, and you got lots. And so, like, you could practically carry a howitzer, and nobody's going to know it's in your jacket. The downside is if you're carrying, like, my normal method of carry is appendix inside the waistband. That's great in the summertime. in the wintertime, when I have a button-down shirt that's untucked and I'm wearing a zip-up merino wool vest over that, and then I might, when I go outside, throw on a coat over that. Now I have multiple layers over top of my concealed carry gun, which is great for concealment. But if I have to get that gun out and get it into play, now I've got to navigate 2 to 3 layers of clothing to clear cover garments just to seat my master grip before I can even begin my draw stroke. And then once I've done that, I have all these layers of cover garment that if I have to reholster the gun, I have to safely navigate through those to put the gun back away. And so there's, it's the double-edged sword of that colder weather carry. So some guys will transition to strong side outside the waistband carry for those winter months, partly because it's easier to hide it and partly because it's one less layer they have to sweep in order to bring the gun into play. For the Vanguard 2 that's also in that bundle, that's for your, that's the summer component, right? Like that's a quick and easy way to throw that gun on under a t-shirt, going out with the fewer layers of clothing between you and the world. I have a lot of friends, like I said, that they only ever carry with a Vanguard 2. But it's nice to have the option, especially since they're both, those bundles are made for if you're a Glock guy or a SIG guy, it's everything you need for your gun. And then a spare magazine carrier. Whether you're carrying inside the waistband or outside the waistband for your firearm, a lot of guys still prefer, for a comfort perspective, to carry their spare mag on a magazine carrier outside the waistband on their belt. It is not everybody's choice. I have a lot of friends that don't carry a reload at all because they're like, if I have shot 17 rounds of 9mm out of my pistol and I'm still having problems, like what is going on in the world that I'm in that bad of a way? Yep. But I can also make the case for the fact that, like, if you find yourself in a situation where there's a mass shooter kind of event, like it might be useful, right? Like I'm sure that Christian Craig had, when he was dealing with that situation in Nairobi, he was glad to have a few spare mags with him. So yeah. I'm a big fan of like giving people an easy button option. If you don't know, it's like, this is a great package for like, if you need some place to start, that's a great place to start out. It's a discounted price in order to make it, like, hey, you're saving some money on the bundle to do it that way. And if you look at our website, we don't do a lot of discounted stuff. Most everything is like it's retail price, but there were a few things where we wanted to make it very approachable for the general public so that it's the gateway drug. So we want to get you on the RCS bandwagon. And then once you're in, we know that you'll find other solutions that as you're learning more about concealed carry, we've got tools to solve those other problems.
Yeah, I am definitely sold. I am on the bandwagon. I was bugging your counterpart constantly. Like, hey, are you free this day? He had to switch. And then, hey, you busy? Hey, you busy? And before this podcast, I'm like, hey, are you guys ready? Like, Charlie, calm down.
Well, and I'm notorious for the fact that, like, from the time I was a kid in junior high with a homework assignment that I was trying to finish I was trying to finish my English homework at the tail end of math class the period before it was due. That was always my thing. So I'm always the guy skidding with his pants on fire right at the last second. But yeah, it's the big thing in our industry, and going back to the first topic we discussed, which was like the origin story of RCS, we had our big early growth tied to states that didn't have concealed carry getting concealed carry. New York, and in particular New York City, one of the final frontiers. You guys are a massive population with like you've been watching through the windows at the rest of the world getting to carry firearms and buy guns and get the gear and the training. And it's nice to now that there's like, okay, things are moving toward as they should have been all along, where it's like, the average citizen has a right to self-defense and the tools to complete that self-defense. And I think that it's great that there's organizations such as yours that can provide that training, because I know there was a long legacy in New York that if it was like New York and New Jersey both, where like, if you're not a cop, we don't teach you this, we won't sell you this, we won't do any of that stuff. And so it's nice to see that it's like people that are willing to, this isn't forbidden, dark arts and magic and witchcraft. It's like, it's self-defense and it's carrying a firearm concealed. And this shouldn't be that hard to get training on. And I think that a lot of civilians, if they're if they attempt concealed carry off of just like whatever the basic required class is for, the state certification, they find out that it's like that doesn't really give them any preparation. It's mostly like, here's what the law says and here's what you can't do, and
Yep.
go with God, there's good luck out there. And so it's that middle gap that you guys are able to fill. But that's one of the reasons we work with companies like you guys, is because you're going to be the primary source of information for these new shooters. And it's important to have those kinds of relationships. And also, like, if there's a feedback loop, your customers and your instructors ask questions that maybe we wouldn't have thought to answer. And so then it gives us something. It impacts the design of products. It impacts the way we do our marketing and our educational content. Like there's a lot of stuff that, like, it's a back and forth between the industry. And because New York has been like this neglected environment because of its political environment, now we're seeing an opportunity to really help out the both gun owners and prospective gun owners in that state.
Yeah, I think it says a lot too. Most of the students that we get are first time shooters. So, it's really nice. And we tell them, listen, you are not coming out like John Wick or Rambo. It's a safety class. Once you get your pistol permit and you get your license, get your gun, go out and train, get used to shooting, and, take these courses. I think, organizations like yours are really good at putting out information, making things relevant to different scenarios. I've seen a lot of training schools and even companies buy this, it's the best, and there's just no explanation of why is it the best
Right.
or how is it made. And one thing I've learned in this community is everybody is very willing to help each other to do things the right
Yeah.
way, in the legal way. As you said, especially in New York, it was very difficult, and then to do this in downtown Brooklyn, it's amazing. We're positioned in a great location. We have really good instructors that have been doing this stuff for decades, and everybody pretty much loves what they do with Guardian. um, Michael, one last question. Got
Yeah.
to ask you. Inside the waistband for you or outside? What is your go-to?
I'm 99% of the time appendix inside the waistband, depending on the day. And now, granted, doing what I do for a living, there's a lot of times where I'm wearing prototypes around, or I'm, because sometimes I'm wearing a prototype where I wouldn't normally carry this way, but we have to you got to get enough wear on these things while you're doing the development of a product to be like, okay, it's good this way, but it needs to change this. But by and large, I'm usually either with an executive select VSB or a Jake, mostly a Jake. I am, when it comes to spare magazine, I typically carry one every day, but I pocket carry it in. I'm actually wearing it right now. We have a product called the Pocket Shield, which is a little like polymer spaceship looking thing that
Very cool.
This gray panel is the Pocket Shield. It is designed to be kind of like a structural support for inside your front pocket of your pants. It does two things. One, it gives you a way to have your pocket clips on stuff that they're not visible outside your pocket, and that helps in a couple ways. One, pocket clips are a tell. That's you might.
Yeah.
The guy who's carrying a pocket knife that way probably is more likely to have a gun on. But the other thing it does is it masks the profile of what's in your pocket. And you wear a thick pair of Duluth pants, it's probably not a big deal to worry about what they don't print that much what's in the pocket. But you got some nice khaki chinos on. This makes a huge difference about keeping what you have in your pocket hidden. This product is actually something we developed. It was the idea of Chris Fry, who's a fantastic instructor. You got to check him out. He's out in Las Vegas now. So another reason for you to go to SHOT Show in Vegas. I'll introduce you guys. But he came to us years ago, actually at a training event, and basically was like, look, I got this idea. I made one myself out of a piece of plastic, and was like, we saw the merit in it. And so we, worked out a deal and brought this thing to market, and it has been just a consistent seller for us. But as you can see, it's got slots on it, and I'm using a Blue Force Gear 10-speed single pistol pouch. And this is normally designed to be, woven on using MOLLE webbing or PALS webbing onto like a plate carrier. But this is on this little pocket shield. And so when I take my spare magazine out, it folds flat and it's comfortable inside my pocket. But at the same time, it holds it nice and securely. There's no sharp edges. And I have my pocket knife and my light all there in one place. So that is, I'm inside the waistband for the gun and in my pocket, usually for my spare magazine. But it's definitely something that everybody's going to try it out for themselves and figure out what's going to work best for their style of dress and their body type.
It's funny. The owner had just walked by. He's watching this, and I'm trying to tell him like, "Hey, I want that. Can we get an invoice for that?" And two of them. Yeah, very very cool stuff. Just curious too with your prototypes. Do you have a male and a female like test all of your prototypes?
We do a lot of testing with both male and female body types. We have it's funny over the years. We even within like just take the male physique, right? Like you have to actually cultivate an entire group of guys because there's so many different body types of men, right? And so it's like then you also run into the fact that like you've got different body types of guys, and you get to be my age where you're like in your late 40s and we all develop a little extra table muscle over the years, right? Like it's a byproduct of life, but guys do different things with that. And so some guys wear their pants closer to their anatomical waistline, and if they gain weight, they just buy a larger waist size. And then some guys, as they gain weight, they just buy shorter inseam and keep the same waist size. And so it's just like the pants get lower and lower down. Yeah. And so what you run into is the closer you wear your pants to your true anatomical waistline, which is almost up by your navel, right? Like that gives you so much more space if you're trying to do appendix carry to put a gun in and keep it hidden. The lower your pants go, the more difficult it gets. But so when we're testing with guys, it's like I've got some friends that they wear their pants real low. They're constantly having to hitch them up and things like that. So like that's one testing group. Then you got the guys that are like, yeah, they kind of look like Humpty Dumpty with their pants up higher. And then you got the dudes that are just like yoked up, workout junkies. They're rolling at the jiu-jitsu gym all 4 days a week, and it's like those guys are awesome. They are reflective of one segment of our customer base. The doughy middle-aged dad is also part of our demographic. And then likewise on the female side of things, you get into testing products with women and you realize very quickly that like female anatomy provides very different advantages and disadvantages. And, working around the female anatomy is one aspect of it. Women's apparel, there's more diversity of styles of dress among women than there is men. Men, it's like there's some form of pants and some form of shirt for the most part, right? Like with women, it's like, is it a dress? Is it is it yoga pants? Is it, like tank tops and flowy skirts, whatever. And so like they typically need a lot more tools for concealed carry because it's a lot harder to be like, this is your one solution for all things. Yep. But generally speaking, it's like, the hardest part with concealed carry on females is if they are carrying, especially strong side, is a great example of this. Strong side, if a woman has hips, right, like the hips and the waist, there's a taper. And if you depending on where they wear their pants relative to either their anatomical waistline or where their hips are, you run into different issues because the gun can actually end up canted in toward their rib cage, because if it's on the taper of the hips, the gun, they're kind of drawing into themselves to get the gun in and out. So you either need to have them dress with a very high-waisted style of pants or have them kind of like early 2000s energy, the low-rise kind of look with it. Because that in between is real tough to deal with. And granted, not every female is built like that, but like the more curvy she is at the waist to the hips, that presents challenges. So like trying to keep a certain, like we have a whole slew of different females that we've sent samples to over the years to give us feedback on. And you have to account for the fact that like, well, it's not just about what your body type is. It's also about like, what's your style of dress? Because, there are some women that if they're not in their work clothes, they're continuously in yoga pants now, right? Like, so that's a whole different world than if it's somebody that's like, working in a restaurant during the day and then going out with their friends at night. It's like they could be wearing very, very different clothing. So it is more challenging, without a doubt, to keep that pool of female testers in play. But we always try to keep all of our products tested. I will freely admit that's why we keep such a niche. I have appendix inside the waistband holsters. We do the strong side. inside and outside the waistband, but we don't do a lot of the other, we don't have belly band and ankle and shoulder holster solutions, because I'm like, there are companies that do that better already.
Yeah.
And until I have something new to bring to that conversation, I like to be the guy that's like, if we do something like the Vanguard or the VSB, I want it to be something where people are like, oh my God, I hadn't even thought of that, So, but overall, I would say that the testing process is always very interesting, because you will get feedback from men and women where like their body type being just a little different makes the feedback very. My business partner has hernia, right? So like, and appendix carry for him, his requirements and what he finds insufferable is very different than I'm like, I don't, no problem for me. I put it on, it felt fine. And he's like, no, it's the worst thing in the world. Just random little life events like that, where it's like your physical body has a difference to it, makes a huge impact, especially for inside the waistband of any kind. So yeah, it's when you're making a product that's designed to carry a dangerous weapon right up against the human body, there's a lot of variables. When we started this, we didn't think about, and it's like you learn this over time, and it's a lot to take in. But
I gotta say, your team is great with customer service as well, and feedback. So,
Thank
folks, if you're looking for a quality piece of equipment with great customer service, definitely check out the folks at Raven Concealment. Michael, just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us today.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Send me an invoice. I'd like to get 2 of those for me and the owner. I'm definitely interested. Thank you once again so much. Anything else you'd like to say before we close out?
No, I just, I'm people of New York. We're here for you. Very excited to know that there's a location you can get the good training, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with you guys to make sure that the resources are there as people are beginning their concealed carry journey to get the gear they need.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Have a great day. Stay safe. Stay
Thanks,
alert.
Charles.
Stay
You
alive.
too. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.